The bakery had been closed for 20 minutes when the card terminal printed a second total. Lena Ortiz was wiping flour from the counter when she heard the small machine begin clicking beside the register. She had already closed the drawer and counted the cash. The lights in the display case were off. No one had touched the terminal. The paper curled onto the counter. Lena was 41. A baker who could tell from the sound of a mixer when dough needed more water. Numbers took her longer, but she understood a day of strong sales. That Saturday, customers had stood outside before opening. By noon, every guava pastry was gone. A corporate order had taken 6 sheet cakes. The report showed card sales of $6,842. Lena checked the deposit summary Mark had left beside the office computer. It showed $2,107. She read both totals again. The difference was too large to be a refund, a fee, or a mistake made while tired. Her husband had managed the bakery's accounts for almost 3 years. That morning, he had told her they were 90 days from losing everything. A buyer named Victor Shaw would arrive Monday with a final offer. Mark said Lena had to sign before their lender froze the business account. Lena carried the terminal report into the office. The desk drawers were open, and several folders were missing. Mark's laptop was gone. She called him. He answered from his truck and sounded more annoyed than surprised. "That machine duplicates batches sometimes," he said. "Throw it away." Lena looked at the merchant number printed beneath the total. It was not the number on the deposit summary. The bakery was not simply losing money. At least some of its sales were being sent somewhere else. "Hi, I'm Ethan Cole, and this is Ethan After Dark, where I tell stories of betrayal, family secrets, revenge, and sweet justice." Now back to the story. Lena had opened Sweet Laurel Bakery 11 years earlier with one oven, for recipes, and a loan secured against the small house her mother had left her. Mark worked construction then. He installed the first counters after his regular shifts and painted the sign while standing on an upside-down milk crate. For years, they built the place together. Then Mark injured his back at 41. Surgery helped, but he could no longer lift drywall or spend 10 hours on a job site. He began handling payroll, supplier invoices, and taxes for the bakery. Lena was relieved. She had always felt slower around spreadsheets, and Mark needed work that still made him feel useful. She gradually stopped opening the bank statements. By the previous winter, Mark had begun warning her that ingredient costs were erasing their profit. Lena responded by working longer days. She reduced the menu, delayed replacing a failing mixer, and stopped paying herself regularly. The dining room still looked busy, but Mark said busy did not mean profitable. 3 weeks earlier, he introduced Victor Shaw, a restaurant investor who offered $420,000 for the bakery, its equipment, and the remaining 7 years on the lease. Mark called the offer a rescue. Lena called it a surrender. They argued until Mark placed a stack of overdue notices on the kitchen table. "We can sell while it still has value," he said, "or the bank can take it after everyone knows we failed." Lena had felt ashamed. Mark had lost his trade, and she had made him carry the part of her business she disliked most. She wondered if her pride had blinded her to what he had been trying to tell her. The sale papers were scheduled for Monday afternoon. Now she had 2 totals from the same day and only one business that was supposed to receive them. Mark came home shortly before midnight. He was 44, with careful manners and the steady voice that had once calmed Lena during equipment failures and tax inspections. He studied the terminal report without sitting down. "This is from the backup account," he said. "What backup account?" "The temporary processor we used after the fraud alert. I told you about it." Lena remembered a week when several customer cards had been declined. She did not remember authorizing another merchant account. Mark opened his laptop and showed her a spreadsheet. The larger total included canceled orders, deposits that would not settle until Monday, and transactions he said had been rerun after connection failures. He moved through the columns with practiced confidence. "The terminal counted attempts," he said. The bank only counts money. Why is the merchant number different? Because it was processed through a temporary provider. That is the point. He then opened the bakery's main checking account. The balance was negative. 2 supplier payments had been returned. A line of credit bearing Lena's electronic signature was almost fully used. The documents gave every answer the paper report did not. Mark also showed her a monthly profit statement. Food costs had risen, overtime had increased, and several catering jobs appeared to have lost money after refunds. Lena recognized the customer names, but not the figures beside them. Mark said that was because she remembered the price charged, not the cost of producing the order. It was another explanation that sounded reasonable because it used the limits of her own attention against her. Mark closed the laptop. Victor is not going to wait while you investigate a printer error, he said. His offer expires Monday. I want access to the processor account. You have access. You just do not know where anything is. His voice remained quiet, which made her sound unreasonable when hers rose. You asked me to handle this, he continued. Now that the numbers are bad, you want the problem to be me. Lena looked at the reports again. She could not explain the canceled transactions or the delayed deposits. Mark could. He had the accounts, the passwords, and 3 years of records. She had one strip of paper he called a machine error. On Sunday morning, Lena asked her shift supervisor, Tessa Reed, whether the terminals had behaved strangely. Tessa was 23 and had worked at Sweet Laurel since high school. She glanced toward the office before answering. Mark said we were having processor problems, she said. Did he tell you to use a different account? He told us which terminal to use. When Lena asked which one, Tessa pointed to the newer machine at the catering counter. Large cake orders and weekend catering deposits went through it. Mark had said those transactions needed separate tracking. Tessa looked uncomfortable, but she did not accuse him of anything. That afternoon, June Hale from the community bank met Lena in the empty dining room. June explained that the bakery had missed 3 loan payments. The bank had already granted 1 extension at Mark's request. He said you were both preparing to sell, June said. Lena told her she had never agreed. June showed her an email sent from Lena's business address approving the extension and acknowledging the planned sale. Lena had given Mark access to that address for supplier contracts. Nothing proved that he had written the message. Nothing proved that she had not. Even the flour supplier supported Mark's version. Sales volume did not matter, he told Lena, if butter, chocolate, utilities, and payroll cost more than the customers paid. By evening, Lena felt the old embarrassment returning. She knew ovens and people. Mark knew systems. Perhaps she had mistaken a technical problem for betrayal because she could not accept that her bakery was failing. Then she found a note taped beneath the catering terminal. It contained a password in Mark's handwriting and the initials MRO. Those initials did not belong to Sweet Laurel Bakery. Lena used the password on the terminal provider's website. It no longer worked. She reset it through the bakery email, but the recovery message went to a phone number ending in digits she did not recognize. When she called customer service, the representative refused to discuss an account without the registered owner's approval. Lena spent the next 4 hours comparing paper order tickets against the deposits Mark had recorded. The pattern seemed obvious at first. Several of the largest weekend orders did not appear in the main account. A wedding order for $3,200 was missing. So was a hospital breakfast order for $1,460. She called both customers. Each confirmed paying by card. Lena photographed the receipts and sent them to June. June called back with disappointing news. A paid receipt proved that a transaction had occurred, but it did not prove where it settled. Refunds, disputes, and processor reserves could delay or reverse the money. Mark arrived while Lena was still on the call. He produced refund confirmations for both orders. The wedding payment had supposedly been rerun after the bride changed cards. The hospital order had been divided between 2 invoices. Lena could not verify the explanations because the online transaction history had been purged after 90 days. "This is what I mean," Mark told June. "She sees one piece and assumes the worst." He sounded exhausted rather than defensive. June advised them to resolve their disagreement before Monday's meeting. Without stronger evidence, the bank would continue treating Mark as an authorized financial manager. Lena's first investigation had found missing deposits, but Mark had an answer for each one. The failure cost Lena more than time. Victor called after speaking with Mark and lowered his offer by $25,000, citing uncertainty around the accounts. Mark blamed Lena for making the buyer nervous. If she continued without proof, she might damage the only deal capable of paying the bakery's debts. The deadline now punished her for investigating it. After he left, she looked at the counter where the old terminal had printed the duplicate total. The machine was gone. Tessa found the terminal behind 2 sacks of bread flour. "Mark told me to throw it out," she said. "I thought you might still want it." Lena carried it into the office and plugged it into the wall. The screen lit up, but it could not connect to the network. The paper report from Saturday had been removed. Lena searched the menus. Most required an administrator code. One did not. Under diagnostic history, the machine offered an option labeled offline batch recovery. She pressed print. The terminal began producing a long ribbon of paper. It listed batch numbers, dates, totals, and the last 4 digits of the receiving merchant account. The records extended back 11 months. Every weekend batch above $2,000 carried the same unfamiliar merchant number. The name was MRO Hospitality. The report did not list a bank account or an owner's name, but it showed something Mark's spreadsheet had hidden. The large orders were not failed attempts. They had authorization codes and completed settlement numbers. Lena added the totals. More than $186,000 had been processed under MRO. She called the payment provider again and read the terminal serial number printed on its base. This time, she did not ask about the account. She reported suspected merchant diversion involving her equipment. The fraud representative gave her a case number and instructed her not to reconnect or reset the device. Its secure memory could be examined against the provider's server records. Mark had removed the paper report. He had almost removed the machine. He had not removed what the machine remembered. The provider's fraud unit responded Monday morning, hours before Victor's meeting. Its preliminary letter confirmed that the terminal had been registered first to Sweet Laurel Bakery. 11 months earlier, an administrator had reassigned it to a second merchant profile without changing the physical device. The second business was MRO Hospitality Consulting. Mark Raymond Ortiz was its sole owner. The provider matched the offline batch numbers to completed settlements. The money had reached a bank account ending in 4418. None of it had been returned to Sweet Laurel through the processor. Mark's strongest explanation collapsed. The terminal was not counting attempts. It was recording completed payments to his company. One question remained. Lena needed to know whether the money stayed with Mark or had somehow paid legitimate bakery expenses. June could not disclose another customer's records. She could, however, examine transfers that entered Sweet Laurel's account. Only $22,000 had returned from MRO, labeled as short-term owner loans. Mark had diverted the bakery's sales, sent back a fraction, and recorded those transfers as money he had personally contributed to keep the business alive. The story he told everyone was built from the money he had taken. Lena remembered every conversation in which he had asked her to thank him for covering payroll. She also remembered something Tessa had said. Mark had decided which terminal employees should use. He had needed their cooperation, even if they did not understand why. Tessa arrived before the other employees. She carried a paper grocery bag filled with rolled terminal receipts. For months, Mark had instructed her to route catering orders through the machine at the side counter. He said it kept taxes separate. When Tessa once used the main register by mistake, he made her void the charge and run it again. "I asked why," she said. He told me you had approved it. Tessa had started saving the end-of-day rolls after Mark began collecting them personally. She did not know they showed theft. She only knew that his instructions changed depending on whether Lena was in the room. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lena asked. Tessa looked down at the bag. Her younger brother attended a technical college nearby. Tessa paid part of his rent. Mark had warned that the bakery might close and said questioning his system would make her the first employee dismissed. She had needed the job badly enough to accept an explanation she did not trust. The saved receipts filled several gaps in the terminal history. Each carried an authorization code, a settlement batch, and the MRO merchant number. Some also had Mark's handwritten note telling staff which register to use. Tessa signed a statement describing his instructions. Lena did not tell her that fear excused everything. It did not. Tessa had watched Lena cut wages from her own paycheck while the large orders went elsewhere. But Lena understood how Mark operated. He did not demand loyalty. He made people afraid of the cost of questioning him. The same method had worked on his wife. At Lena's request, the processor sent a field technician to preserve the terminal record. June observed, and Tessa watched from the kitchen doorway. The technician recorded the device serial number and generated a signed diagnostic report. The terminal's secure transaction counter matched the provider's server ledger one batch at a time. The report established 4 facts. The payments were real. They had been approved. They had settled to MRO hospitality. The administrator who reassigned the device had logged in with Mark's verified credentials. The technician then removed the paper roll housing. Folded beneath it was the missing Saturday report. Mark had hidden it inside the machine when he took the terminal from the counter. His fingerprint would not be necessary. The report itself matched the secure batch record and the photograph Lena had taken before calling him. Victor arrived early and saw the technician packing the device. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Lena said there would be a meeting, but there would not be a sale. Victor reminded her that he had spent money preparing the agreement. He said Mark had represented himself as authorized to negotiate for both owners. Lena asked to see every side agreement connected to the purchase. Victor refused at first. When June explained that the bank would not release its lien while fraud was under review, his position changed. One agreement promised MRO Hospitality a $60,000 transition fee after closing. Mark had arranged to be paid once for draining the bakery and again for selling what remained. The hidden account records arrived through Mark's lawyer later that week, after Lena formally challenged the sale and reported the diverted funds. The money did not reveal a secret second family or a luxurious life. It revealed hundreds of sports wagers. Mark began betting after his back injury. At first, the amounts were small. He told himself he was replacing the overtime pay he had lost. When he fell behind, he increased the bets because one successful weekend seemed capable of repairing the damage. Each loss made the next risk feel more necessary. By the time he redirected the first catering payment, he owed more than he could admit. He returned enough money to the bakery to keep the doors open, then described those transfers as his own rescue loans. That allowed him to appear responsible while Lena appeared incapable of facing reality. Selling the bakery would clear his private debts and provide the transition fee. Lena would lose the business, but Mark believed she would eventually be grateful that he had prevented foreclosure. His desperation explained why he began. His planning explained why Lena could not treat it as a mistake. He had not taken money once in panic. For 11 months, he had watched her work before dawn while he built records designed to make her doubt the value of that work. Mark arrived expecting Victor, June, and a set of sale papers. Instead, he found Lena, Tessa, the payment provider's report, and Naomi Price, a forensic accountant hired through Lena's attorney. Victor attended with his own counsel because he wanted his company separated from the disputed transaction. Mark sat beside the window. "You are destroying the only offer we have," he said. Lena placed Saturday's 2 totals in front of him. Mark repeated his explanation about duplicate attempts. Naomi opened the certified server ledger. Every disputed batch had completed authorization and settlement codes. Mark said MRO was a legitimate consulting company used to manage temporary processing. June presented the transfer analysis. Only a fraction of the money had returned to the bakery, and Mark had falsely recorded it as personal lending. He turned to Tessa. "You did what you were instructed to do," he said. "Do not let them make this your fault." Tessa placed her saved receipt rolls on the table. "You told me Lena approved it," she said. "You told me I would lose my job if I asked her." Mark's expression tightened. He claimed Lena had known about MRO because she had access to the business email. Naomi showed that the recovery number belonged to Mark and that each administrator login came from his phone. The terminal's device record confirmed when he reassigned it. Victor's attorney added the transition agreement. Mark looked at Victor. That fee was for work after the sale. Victor's attorney asked whether Lena had ever approved it. Mark said her signature on the sale would have approved every attached agreement. Naomi pointed out that the fee appeared in a separate document Lena had never received. Victor stopped defending the arrangement. He moved his chair away from Mark and asked that the record reflect his company had relied on Mark's representations. "There will be no sale," Victor said. For the first time, Mark's calm gave way. He told Lena that Sweet Laurel would have collapsed without him. He reminded her of the nights he had worked beside her, the counters he built, and the injury that took away the only profession he knew. "I was trying to get us out," he said. "You were getting yourself out," Lena replied. "You were leaving me with the failure you created." Mark said she would never have understood the pressure. "You never gave me the truth to understand." He did not confess to every transaction. He did not need to. The terminal, processor, receipts, bank transfers, and side agreement described the scheme without his cooperation. Lena removed the Ensign sale contract from the table. "You do not manage this bakery anymore," she said. "You do not speak for me anymore either." That was the decision Mark had spent 11 months preventing her from making. The bank froze further transfers while investigators traced the diverted money. Lena's attorney filed claims against MRO and began divorce proceedings. Mark agreed to surrender his interest in the bakery and repay part of the loss from the sale of a truck and retirement account. The remaining conduct was referred to prosecutors and the payment provider. The consequences did not return every dollar. Lena negotiated a revised loan with the bank after Naomi reconstructed the bakery's real performance. Sweet Laurel had not been failing. Without the diverted sales and invented consulting expenses, it had earned a modest profit throughout the previous year. Naomi showed Lena how the deception had survived ordinary review. Mark diverted revenue before it reached the main account, so the bakery's bookkeeping appeared internally consistent. Expenses were real, deposits were low, and the resulting loss looked plausible. Lena had searched the statements for money leaving. She had never considered that the theft occurred before the money arrived. That truth did not make recovery easy. Lena reduced catering for 2 months, replaced the compromised terminals, and gave June direct reporting access while she learned to review every settlement herself. Tessa remained at the bakery. Trust returned slowly and with conditions. Lena no longer confused forgiveness with the removal of safeguards. Mark sent one letter from his attorney's office. He wrote that he had believed one large win would replace everything before she noticed. Lena did not answer. On the morning Sweet Laurel resumed full service, the first customer bought a loaf of cinnamon bread and 2 coffees. The new terminal approved the payment. Lena waited beside the register until the receipt printed. She checked the bakery name, merchant number, and total before placing it in the drawer. The amount was small, but it had reached the account where it belonged. For nearly a year, Mark had used numbers to persuade her that hard work could not be trusted. Lena had learned something more useful than suspicion. She had learned that trust did not require blindness. The printer clicked again as the next customer paid. This time, the total was honest. And that's the end of this one. If it kept you up, do me one favor, hit subscribe. I tell a new story every single night, and I'd love to have you back. Good night.